Chile is the trusted partner for pairing, matching, and data enrichment, helping companies hire better talent faster. Chile help recruiters connect candidates with jobs by enhancing the candidate experience, simplifying the hiring process, reducing hiring costs, and saving time and money. For more information, visit www.rchile.com.
What great ideas are so close within your grasp? Seeing other points of view, anticipating change, considering multiple possible turnouts, acknowledging uncertainty, searching for compromise. We're going to talk about how to get over those limiters of innovation so that you can extract better thinking from yourself and your team. So let's talk about how to win the future.
In this episode, I virtually sit down with Paralympic judo champion Chris Skelley MBE. From battling childhood bullying and being misdiagnosed by doctors to finding strength through sport, Chris shares his powerful journey of resilience, mental health struggles, and ultimate triumph on the world stage. We dive into the highs of winning gold in Tokyo, the emotional fight for bronze in Paris, and why that medal means more than any other. Now retired, Chris reflects on sacrifice, identity, and his mission to inspire the next generation to thrive whatever their challenges. Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast, and it's my pleasure to welcome on board Chris Skelley MBE, gold and bronze Paralympic medalist, mentor, coach. Have I missed anything there, Chris? Is there anything?
No, not really.
Astronaut or something like that, as well.
Still trying to figure out what the next couple of identities are, but yeah.
Superhero, I don't know what it could be.
I wish.
Chris, it's brilliant to have you on the podcast. I will admit, right, there's a tiny little bit of a fan in me because I have seen you at the last kind of couple of Paralympics on TV. I used to do a little bit of judo myself, and I'm a big fan of kind of combat sports, strength sports, all that kind of stuff. So it is brilliant to have you on. And I'm trying not to let my inner child just kind of go, I've got Chris here, and I'm really looking forward to this. But Chris, it would be really good just if you, in your words, right, you could let the audience know a little bit about yourself and your kind of and what you do.
Yeah, well, no, thank you for having me on, James. It's a huge honour to be on your podcast. Thank you so much. So I'm a northerner, originally from Hull, but I have to admit I was actually born in Nottingham, but only lived there for less than a few months, and then lived the rest of my life in Hull. And kind of my mum and dad were quite worried about me because I was quite a shy young lad. I was very late in my development. I didn't talk till I was about 5. I found out that I was hearing impaired from a really early age. And also found out I was visually impaired from a very early age. But no one really told me till kind of my later teens and was diagnosed with a condition. So kind of just me trying to survive and thrive in my younger age. They got me into 2 sports which were very complementary, which was judo and rugby. And they kind of kept me going through school, making friends, because I wasn't, very a confident young man, and sport helped me have that little escapism, because school can be, I'll be honest, school can be quite horrible. I was bullied a lot at school. I was different. And then I always say I found my tribe at my secondary school, my best mates. And, that's what sport helped me with. And sport helped me kind of deal with that kind of loneliness as a kid at school. And then, decided to want to be a mechanic, and then kind of around the 17, 18 mark, my eyes got constrict like really bad with the light, so that's why I'm wearing sunglasses now inside. And my acuity, what little acuity I did have with glasses, didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So I was really struggling, and then there was no kind of answer for what was happening to me. And I saw the doctors in Hull, and they called me psychotic. They called me, I was making it up. They didn't no one believe me. And these are the professionals that you put all your trust in. And even one doctor laughed in my face when I suggested what it could be. It's like, listen, I do the typical thing anyone does when they hear them say, Google, which is a very dangerous thing to do. But when no one's giving you answers, you you have to try and find it yourself. So, I suggested albinism, and I got absolutely laughed at and told not to be so stupid, and then he referred me to a psychiatric nurse, and then yeah, had a chat with the nurse and the psychiatric nurse, and the person was like, "There's nothing wrong with you psychotically. You're very with it." And then I got whisked off to America, both my father and his boss, and they found out I actually did have oculotaneous albinism, but a rare version of it. And then he kind of came back and then got finally diagnosed and found a wonderful doctor, Professor Michaelidis, in London, who looked after me and really did. Him and the Americans really just put the arm around me that I needed, because as a 17, 18-year-old man, I'll be honest, I was really struggling with my identity. I was really struggling with the condition. I was really struggling with just kind of my own mental health, being told that I was making it up, that it was all in my own head. And it creates a lot of anxiety and depression. And I'm very open with it now that, I suffer with PTSD from even now, dealing with my condition. So, the one constant thing in my life was judo, because I had to stop my rugby, because of rugby, it got a bit harder with the aspect of tackling people and tackling the wrong people, which now I actually play again, but with other visually impaired people. So, I finally got to do the sport again 15 years later, which was amazing. But then I was really upset because I couldn't play rugby anymore. And judo was that one constant. It gave me 2 hours in an evening to escape the world what's around me. And my judo coach, they loved me to bits and they cared for me, but they literally said to me, "When you're on this mat, you forget everything. You switch it all off. Just enjoy the moment, be with us." And I was training blindfolded, because the light was just too much without my sunglasses on. So I put the blindfold on and started training blindfolded, and I started to win at sighted events blindfolded. I looked a little bit like 50 Shades of Grey, but I enjoyed the challenge, and I was beating people, and then the Paralympic coach was just at one event. Came across to me, started to talk to me, and then that's kind of how the journey started. And because I was always been in the kind of the England program and GB program, but it was always the kind of people knew of me, but not really kind of who I was. And then this kid who's struggling with his sight was beating sighted people, so that kind of got people's attentions. And then I got told about the Paralympic program. I got to go to London 2012 on a Paralympic inspiration program, and then the rest is history. And then that's when the journey really did start to take off. And if I don't know where I would have been without sport. I think I'm very, very open about my my depression, my anxiety, and sport gave me that kind of escapism, and judo gave me that kind of freedom to go off and be the best version of myself. And if I didn't have judo, I wouldn't be here now in Swindon with my wife, living the best life of her. So when one door closes, another door opens.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
obviously,
so,
then that kind of goal comes along with being a Paralympian.
and Chris, you kind of it was the over 90 and under 100 kilograms, right? So you're not a small chap, right?
No.
So and was that why you kind of picked those? Why you kind of felt inclined to those sports? Because rugby, you need to be of a certain size, right? You know what I mean? And judo, at that, you're gonna, you've got to be that size to take on the other guys you're going to be kind of playing. So was that just kind of why you were inclined in that direction, right? Or was it,
Well,
and I don't
yeah.
mean that, I'm not being you know what I mean. You're a big guy. I mean, you look like a rugby player, basically,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's the
A lot
kind
of
of
people
physique
do
you've got.
think, yeah. Well, I have to tell a little bit of a story though. I did like to dance, and my wife doesn't believe this story, and my mum will back me up on this. Like, this kind of dance company came into, like, Royal Ballet of Scotland came into my primary school, and they did like a workshop, and then
Mhm.
one of the teachers was like, "I think Chris should come and try out for the company." And then my wife doesn't believe this story, but it is true. And my mum can back me up here, and my sisters. So I was asked to go and dance for a dance company. But, as a lad, as a young lad, you're like, "I don't want to dance. That's for," as a young, kid in primary school, that's for girls, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not dancing. I want to be a judo fighter, a rugby player. So I do have other talents. which most people would
Are
say,
you pitching for Strictly? Is that
I
what this is?
will. No, I don't know. I think if you wouldn't want to see my thighs in a leotard, I'll tell you that. But
But I
no,
tell you what, I don't think that's uncommon, right? Because it's very, Arnold Schwarzenegger very famously did ballet, right, or took ballet lessons for when he was kind of when he was training for Mr. Olympia and things like that. So I think I can see it's a coordination thing,
yeah,
probably
yeah,
more
yeah.
than anything else, isn't it? Right? Yeah.
Dance is really good. Dance gives you coordination, rhythm. It gives you the feel as well, in which a lot of fighters need to have to feel, because you need to be able to feel, and especially in Paralympic judo where you grip up all the time, you have to feel for your hands. So yeah, so for me, the feel aspect was the biggest thing, and as I say, my sister did a lot of dancing, my little sister, and I used to show some moves when I was used to try and help her. But judo and rugby were my two biggest loves. They were the ones that kind of really were around me when I was needed that support, and judo especially saved me.
And so when you moved, kind of made that kind of decided you were going to kind of stick with kind of judo, was it just the? Is it still just the kind of was it just the 2 hours in the evening that you were doing of judo, or was there a whole other regime? Again, as a person that goes to the gym fairly often, right? There must be as an elite athlete, right? I would imagine that judo plays literally 20% of what you actually do. There's all the other stuff with
Oh, so much
diets
effort. Yeah.
and all that other kind of comes into it, right? So that also must have it be its own journey, right? As well as, and that's part of being an elite athlete is to go on that kind of diet, training, all the other weight, strength training, all the other stuff that goes along with it,
So
you know.
yeah, no, you're right. You're totally right, James. But I'll be honest, I was never naturally gifted athlete. So everything I've had to do is really work hard at it. And in 2013, they opened a national training centre in Walsall and offered me a place to train there with the Paralympic team. I didn't have anything going on in Hull, so I wanted to kind of travel the world. I was already started to travel the world a little bit, and I just stuck the hand off and said, "Yeah, what have I got to lose? And if it doesn't work, I'll come back home." But it was the best decision I ever made, especially with someone with visual impairment. I almost had to kind of grow up quick with it. I had to learn to live it with myself. And I think, a lot of people, when they have a disability, I think a lot of the first thing people do, they put cotton wool around them and try to stop them from hurting themselves. And I'll be honest with you, I failed a lot. I failed at, I dyed clothes, apparently. I burnt food. I had to learn how to be an elite athlete. And, people see the end product, is standing on a rostrum, but they don't see me trying to figure out how to be an elite athlete with not being very talented at the sport, because I've been at that centre was at the centre for nearly 13, 14 years, and I've seen so many talented athletes come through, and a lot of them struggled because they needed to live the life of an elite athlete. And I started to realise that, and I had realised and had a big kind of eye-opening moment that I had to live the life. You have to be committed. When most people are going on holidays, you're in the gym doing training. When most people are going out on a night out, you're recovering in your house. You're not going out drinking. You're living almost like living like a monk. Because you want to become the best in the world. And I've missed a lot of funerals. I've missed a lot of weddings. I've lost my birthday parties. I've missed everything because of that dream of becoming a Paralympic champion. But at the age of 18, 19, when you're going through this kind of understanding your vision and what you can do and adapting to the environment, I've also had to learn how to be an elite athlete. So it's almost kind of everything came on top of me, and I had to kind of adapt very quickly. And, my coach, Ian Johns, always used to say, when I first started, I was always surviving, always like, trying to keep my head above water. And then kind of towards the back end of my career, I was thriving. People were coming to me, asking me questions, younger kids at the centre wanting to understand what to do, and, people coming for advice. And I think, again, people are so afraid to fail, afraid to make mistakes. And I always say, it's not failure, it's learning.
Yeah.
You're constantly learning.
You learn more from failure than you do from winning, right?
Exactly.
That's
Exactly. And, for me, like, I learned how to live with my impairment. I learned how to live with it. I already learned how to live with a hearing impairment. I had to learn to live with stuff and keep thriving in a world that really doesn't really help you to thrive either. You know what I mean? Especially with a person with a disability. It's very difficult to thrive in a world. A lot of people are quite ignorant. People will shout stuff at you. People will go, "Why are you wearing sunglasses inside?" Or, "Oh, you're Gandalf," because I have a stick. You know what I mean? So it's just, like that, it's you just have to deal with the world. And as an 18, 19-year-old, I had to really learn how to be an elite athlete and learn with living with my visual and hearing impairment.
So let's jump forward a little bit and let's jump to Tokyo, right? Which was a strange Olympics at the best of times, right?
Yeah,
By the way, because it was in the middle of COVID, there wasn't, there was nothing, there was no spectators and all that kind of stuff, right? But you obviously did very well there, to say the least. Take us through kind of like the a little bit around the kind of prep running up to that, and then actually while you were there, what was the kind of atmosphere like? What was it like? How was it? Did it affect you? Was it helpful? Was it negative? Yeah, just kind of talk us through that.
So I'm very, very lucky to go to 3 Paralympics and to go to Rio in 2016 and sadly not come away with a medal, which really did hurt me. And I, hurt myself, hurt my coach. We put so much hard work into it. But, I had that realization that I wasn't ready. I needed to, we talk about failure. I needed to fail because I needed to get better. I looked at certain things I was doing wrong. I needed to get better in certain areas, get stronger, get fitter, start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which really helped complement my judo, which was another sport I love very dearly. I still love now. So I had to really learn from that experience in Rio. However, as you say, Tokyo was a totally different Paralympics. On top of trying to go and compete in the best version of yourself, you're trying to avoid this horrible kind of disease that's going around and killing people, and and it is very difficult. Like we were given exemptions to come back to elite training very quickly after the first lockdown, and it's that hard decision I had to have my wife. Like, I need to get back because they didn't really give you a date when it was going to go. Like, you had to be ready. So I had to say to her, I'm going to try and protect you the best as possible. I need to train. I need to go back in the first wave of training. And we had a big discussion. We had a big, really deep chat. And we are going to put ourselves at risk. And I'm going to be, in contact with people. So there was that kind of hard conversation you had that you're risking your life to go and be the best version of yourself. But it was a no-brainer for me. I wanted to be a Paralympic champion. And I do generally say this. I think Tokyo would have been one of the best Paralympics in out the whole kind of modern Olympic Paralympic era, because Japan they had such a kind of big growth as a country in disability sport, in kind of understanding disabilities, and even though they had all these issues, they still put on an amazing Paralympics. It still felt like a Paralympics. It was a little bit weird, there's no crowd, but your mates are still there. The inner core team was still there, and I do apologise. That's my no. Sorry. That was,
right.
Guys, that was my robotic Hoover, Clive. He started to also turn off.
We've never had a robotic Hoover on the podcast before.
I thought my dog was unpredictable, but my robotic Hoover is definitely unpredictable.
I tell you what, robotic Hoovers, you've changed. I tell you, you know what I mean.
I know, you've gone out of your mind. But no, that was the kind of different aspect of it, and it was kind of, I had to isolate myself away as well from my family. My anxieties were high. I wanted to get the Paralympics. And I had to isolate myself away from family and friends to make sure I got there. And you're hearing these horror stories of people not being able to go because they had COVID. So this was the kind of really tough thing about it. But again, the Japanese did an amazing job. It was weird that there was no one kind of there. Yeah. But I think my inner core team was there. And, I still had an amazing time.
And so mentally, at that point, obviously you hadn't had the greatest success in Rio. Were you at the point now that, despite no crowds and despite kind of COVID and despite kind of interrupted training, did you mentally think, I've got this, right? I can't. I'm or is that just elite confidence that it just comes with? You just have. Is it driven into like, you can do this, you can be champion, or did you think?
So
I don't know.
I suffer a lot from anxiety and kind of questioning myself. So I'm constantly battling myself. And I'll be honest, as I say, I'm not naturally an elite athlete. I'm just kind of, I'm kind of learning from everything I'm doing. And I had one of the hardest challenges ahead, because one of the best judo fighters I personally think in the Paralympic era was Gugashori. and he's a Georgian fighter who fought on the kind of Olympic circuit for many years, and then came across because he was blind in one eye and had very bad vision in the other. And he was one of the hardest and strongest people to fight, and I've never beaten him before. However, being an elite athlete, as I talked about earlier, you have to make the hard choices. You have to make the kind of, living away from family, not drinking, everything like that. And he lost at the first hurdle, so he went to Paralympics a bit earlier than me, and he beat up a security guard because he caught COVID, and he wanted to get drink. He kind of lost his mind a bit, and and was just trying to drink because he was so upset. And he's such a lovely, gentle guy, but obviously despair and grief kind of makes you do stupid things. And he, caught COVID, got tested, got isolated. What he didn't realise, if he actually stayed to the course, he would have been able to fight, but he just lost his mind. And that's what elite kind of stuff does to you. And I was really upset because he got sent home, he got put in prison, he got disgraced. I wasn't allowed to fight him, and that really upset me because I felt like that version of me would have been able to beat him at the games. But kind of I was a bit kind of, when I won it, I had the first thing I was like, well, you didn't beat Gugachori, you didn't beat him. And I was I was so happy, but that kind of like inner man came out of me, like little annoying kind of man that sits in the back of your head and goes, well, you didn't beat him, you didn't face him. But my sports psychologist, Andrew Cruikshank, an amazing sports psychologist, he kind of put it in this way. He said, you beat him from the off. He couldn't control his emotions, he couldn't control the environment, he failed at the first attempt. You beat him there. And the funniest thing was, when that all happened, my coach called me up and he goes, have you heard the news? And at this point, I was sat in my second house in Walsall when I was training, because I had to live up in Walsall, live in Swindon with my wife. So I was kind of commuting and living there in a week, coming back. So it was a tough life. And he said, oh, have you heard? I was like, no. I was like, well, Gugachori's been banned. And then the first thing, he'd be my coach, love him to bits, but he occasionally said the wrong thing to me at the wrong time. And he went, oh, well, more pressure on you now then, mate. Better go and win it. I was like, oh, thanks, mate. You know what I mean? And we had a great relationship. I just laughed it off. But, there was a lot of pressure on me. That guy was one of the favourites to win it. I was the one to challenge it. He got sent home, so the pressure came on me. I'm world number one. But then it's how you deal with the pressure. And I knew that I had to deal with the pressure. I knew that I needed to be Paralympic champion. And I knew that I was one of the best ones on the mat on that day. And no one could have beat me, and I proved it. And it was one of the most satisfying, amazing moments of my whole life. And to be able to kind of stand in that rostrum here, God Save the King, and then hearing the British lads singing it as well and going, oh, no. It felt like we were in Britain, and it was just, it was the most amazing feeling. I think my performance director, Nigel Donnelly, was crying, John D was crying, everyone was crying. It was just such a beautiful moment. And it's just, to be able to stand in that rostrum and, it was just a most amazing feeling.
And I guess also the thing is, you talked about the pressure. This obviously brings its own pressure now, because you've now got a target on your back, right? Because you're Olympic champion. You're the top of the sport. Anything from that point onwards is, now everyone's wants to beat you, right? You're the one that's kind of everyone's going after, I guess, right? Is that part of it as well?
So there is a little bit of that, but as ever in my life, a lot of things changes very quickly. And IBSA, which is the International Blind Association, decided to change the weight categories and the weight and the classification section. So it used to be B1, B2, B3. And to get classified in Paralympic judo, you need to be either B1, B2, or B3. And classification basically means someone looks at my condition, shines a light in my eyes, send my eyes off like a bowling pin, and my eyes are flying everywhere, and they say either you can fight or you can't. So you have to be classified to fight. So after Tokyo, they decided to change it to J1, which are fully blind people, and J2, which are visually impaired people like myself. However, they then changed the weight category. So it used to be kind of under 60, 66, 73s, 81s, 90s, under 90s, under 100s, plus 100s. However, they kind of shortened the groups down. They put weight groups together. And there was a hard decision of, do I go down to under 90s or go up to plus 90s? And it's a hard conversation because my best mate, Jack Hodgson, he was on the plus 90s. And people are going to me, well, you need to make under 90s. I was like, I can't make under 90s. I'm a big guy. Yeah. Me making under 90s, I'll look anorexic. Like, I'd be physically, and I put my health at risk. So I had a conversation with my coach. He was kind of, it is up to you. and I decided to stay up, which meant I had to put the weight on, I had to change my whole fighting style, I had to adapt to the environment. So in some ways, actually, I actually didn't feel the pressure because my weight category went. So I became the hunter again. I became the person who was hunting the best people in this category down,
Yeah.
which I find is the best version of myself. When I become the hunter, I love trying to chase each other down. I become like an obsessed fan almost. You know what I mean? Like, I need to know what they're doing. Are they working harder than me? How can I beat them? Like, and I use performance analysis a lot. So I was going over a lot of these fighters, but then I was also going over who I was as a fighter. How do I need to adapt my judo? So all this kind of played into this kind of big cauldron of kind of how do I become the best in this category. And then that kind of set off the kind of plus 90 era, because between Paris and Tokyo was very short, so I had to adapt very quickly, and I had to learn how to fight as a big man, like even super heavyweight. So yeah, that became the next challenge, which I think I did pretty well.
Well, yeah. If we shift to Paris, right? Again, a pretty successful games. What I would suggest, I would say so. You might not. I don't know how you kind of feel about it. Obviously, that you came back with a bronze in that in that case, as opposed to kind of the gold. But how again, interestingly enough, from a sports person, how do you kind of what does that feel like? Is that a success? Is that or have you put all that pressure on your shoulders and you feel that how does that work? Mentally
So
again.
I always say this. So the bronze medal means means so much more to me than the gold medal. And I'll explain a little bit now. Like, a lot of people, when I say that, go, what the hell are you on about? Like, gold medal's the elite. But the bronze medal for me in Paris outweighs the one in Tokyo because of the journey I had to go on. So, as I said to you a bit earlier, I suffer from PTSD, depression, anxiety, very open about that. And I think more people need to be open about it because it happens to anyone. It's not discriminative. It doesn't matter who you are. It will attack any of you. This is the thing we're dealing with as a human. And I suffer a lot in my own head from anxiety of who I was and who I am still with my disability. I always question myself, do I actually have the condition? My wife has a lot of pressure and has to deal with my anxiety and my depression moments. And before Paris, it got very bad because I slipped back into it. I slipped into that kind of not wanting to exist anymore, struggling to kind of, be here. I was married, I had an MBE all to my name, but I just didn't want to be here. I don't know what happened. I slipped very hard and very quickly back into that kind of dark period of my life. But then it all kicked off in 2024 because when I got to my first classification event of 2024, and even just remember I had been classified in this kind of cycle.
Yeah.
You have to get classified for the Paralympics. So we got it done at the first one, and they were like, right. I remember I've been classified for the last 15 years. I got there and he went, no, we can't classify you. And I sat there and I was like, why can't you classify me? You've classified me in this cycle already. You know my condition. All the information is there. You've classified me on that kind of book you've had already before because you take you a book of your condition. They're like, well, we need more information. We need to see in the back of your eye. And that sent me into a spiral of depression. I mean, heavy, like I wasn't eating, I wasn't drinking. I was bursting into tears. My coach literally had to kind of pick me up. Louise was calling me every morning to make sure I was all right and I was still here. Like, she had to deal with a lot. Like, it was especially the first event I came back, and I just remember going up to Bolton where she was doing a tournament director, and I just fell into her arms and just burst into tears. And my wife was a bit like, she's got to run this tournament, but there's me in heaps of tears, and she was amazing. She dealt with it, and there's that kind of trying to heal yourself whilst trying to get classified, because all these emotions have come back to the surface and hit me really hard, and I'm dealing with my own mental thoughts, I'm dealing with myself, and it was so hard. Like, I couldn't explain to anyone what was going on in my own head. And I was still having to be an elite athlete, which is even harder because you're trying to get yourself ready for Paris, but not knowing you might not compete. I went to the next event, and again, they wouldn't classify me. They wanted more information. They moved the goalpost, even though we got a picture of the back of my eye. They moved the goalpost because they wanted to understand why my condition changes in different sort of lights environments and stuff like that, which again was explained by the medical professionals, but they still didn't understand it. And it got to the stage where the British Judo, the International Blind Committee, and International Paralympic Committee all got together and had a meeting and said, why is Chris not being classified? It was like, I don't know if you've seen the meme of the Spider-Man on
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
everyone
yeah,
was like that, pointing at each other, but no one would take responsibility. And that hurt me because they've sent me into a massive bout of depression, of not wanting to be here, questioning my existence, and no one would take responsibility. And I was just sat there going, I just want to fight. Let me
yeah,
fight. I want to prove to people why I'm one of the best in the world. And he wouldn't. And I got to Georgia, the last kind of classification event of the cycle, and it was a do or die moment. And I think there was so much kind of uproar from other countries, from the International Paralympic Committee. Everyone was going, he should be fighting, that they classified me. But what they sent me into was not only kind of sent me back about 15 years in my own head, but also just kind of nearly didn't exist anymore, because it got to that really kind of difficult moment in my own head. And the sport that saved me kind of weirdly put me back into it, but then saved me again. And it was
yeah.
just like, it was such a mind kind of screw up in my own head. And then from about the Georgia last event of the cycle to Paris, I had about 12 weeks. And in between all this going on, I also injured myself because, as I said, I was trying to train as an elite athlete and I was making stupid mistakes. I was breaking down in sessions. I was crying mid-fighting. Like, people just saw a different side to me, where the happy-go-lucky Chris was not there. It was the
Yeah.
the really kind of depressed, not with him, trying to put a brave face on. And I had about 12 weeks to sort my knee out, to sort my own mental health out, to kind of get myself back into a good enough position. And I did it. And I'm very proud of myself, because coming back from that is quite hard. And to come back to even put in a good performance at the games, a lot of people were just
So
happy to see me step onto the mat.
So really, yeah, it was a tougher journey, right? So that's probably why it means more, right? Because the what you generally had to overcome, that resilience that you had to put in, how far you had to dig deep, right? That's why the bronze means more, because the journey was more difficult, as opposed to, coming away with something basically was basically, the rectification for the, like, this, I had to go on this, and so that's how I kind of got there.
I had to beat myself, and that is
Yeah.
one of the hardest fights. The hardest fight in the world for me is not Gugachori, it's not the Georgian Uzbekistan in my weight, it's not the Kazakhstan guy who I have to beat as well. It's me. I had to beat me, and that's the hardest person to beat, because that person knows what you're thinking, knows how you're feeling, knows what you're going to do next. Like, they're there every step of the way with you. And to beat that person, to even step on the mat, for me was a win. So, my wife said it's the first time she's seen me so chilled and so relaxed in the Paralympics. She's seen me in Tokyo where I was a bit nervous wreck, and it was obviously kind of got a lot of pressure on me. And she said, you just look so chilled and you look like you knew what you did. And I was so close to getting to my second Paralympic final. But sadly, he caught me. And I don't think it was a score, but, here and there, like,
Yeah.
he was just a
Well,
better player than
I
me.
remember watching that match. I remember watching that match, and my recollection is you looked ecstatic, right? When you kind of, you looked happy. I mean, you looked kind of like that it was, the journey had paid off almost, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it looked like, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it looked like.
It was the journey had kind of um come to especially that little chapter
Yeah,
came to what the best version it could have come on.
yeah,
And I, if you said to me at the start of the issue with the German kind of event, classification event, I would be standing in Paris with a medal on my neck, I'd have bitten your hand off. No matter what colour it is, no matter bronze, silver, or gold, I just wanted to be on that rostrum again.
yeah,
And
yeah.
to beat myself was the biggest challenge.
And so, I'm not going to keep you for too much longer, Chris, because, as I said, we're going to try and kind of, but I do want to cover a little bit about what the kind of the future is, and what you kind of do now. So, have you retired, or are you still competing? And what's the situation at this point? Are you looking to go to the next Olympics? Is this, what's the situation?
So I've retired. So I retired about God, it was nearly 2 months ago now.
Right.
I decided to end it on my terms. A lot of things that happen in elite sport, people try to carry on and try to get to the next one. You just become on this kind of sort of treadmill. And I had a really deep dive in my own head again, which is quite vast. And I just was like, I can't get any better than what I've just done. Like, that is not gonna, even if I do get to LA and I go and do with it again, that medal in Paris is always going to be the best one I'm ever going to have. So, and also, I'm 31. I'm getting older. My body's feeling a bit sore. I was picking up little injuries before the Paris. Like, I was maintaining my body. And also, I just miss living. Like, I've been married now nearly 2 years, and before Paris, I've not even lived with my wife properly more than 40 hours on a weekend. And it just wasn't doable anymore. Like, the sport's it's growing, which is amazing. I want to live with my family. You have to commit more. You have to still live like an elite athlete. And after doing it for 15 years, you almost go, I want to see what else is out there for me. Like, what else am I going to try and do? I only stayed on to Paris, A, because I wanted my family to be there, and B, I wanted to try and go and win another gold medal. And sadly, I didn't go and win another gold medal, but I won one better, because I had to come through that journey, as I explained before. So then I just said to my wife, I can. And it was this moment where, beforehand, she knew I was done. But I ran off the mat. I got chucked off the mat by my coach. I stood up, he took me to Louise, and I just fell into her arms and said, let's go and live our lives. Let's go and live our lives together and be us, be, me and Louise, be me and Louise and Milo, and I want to start a family. There's so much I want to do. And especially now, although I've stopped elite sport, I want to go back to why I did it. And that was for fun. And also, I want to go and help other people who was in that position where I was as a 17, 18-year-old lad who didn't have that person who put a hand on them to go, you're going to be okay. Like, I didn't have that for about a year, and I had to deal with it myself and my mum and my dad. And it was just, I had to deal with it myself. So now what I want to do is that elite kind of selfish side of me is gone. Like, it's gone in Paris. That is the kind of cut-off point now. It's now my time to give back to people, to help people, to show people, no matter if you have a disability, you can still survive and thrive in this world. Even though the world is quite a hard place to live in, it is still livable. You can still go and be the best version of yourself. And, you don't have to always be, like, this is kind of thing around disability. Like, if you have a disability, you want to be a Paralympian. But that's not necessarily the thing. You might want to be, I don't know, the best version of yourself, which might be an astronaut, it might be a pilot, it might be, IT. Whatever that person with that disability don't have to necessarily go to the Paralympics. They could be something in the business world, which, I kind of understood, especially coming away from sport into the business world. It was such a kind of eye-opening thing, because as an elite sports person, you have to make decisions under pressure. You have to make tough ones. You have to learn how to work as a team. There's so many kind of ways to work as an elite kind of athlete you have to take into business. So there's so many things I've got in my own head. Again, James, it is a vast mind of mine, and I don't know if you've ever kind of seen already. I overthink stuff a lot, kind of always trying to be that elite athlete, always who's going to be in with me, thinking about stuff, planning stuff, like obsessive over stuff. So, I don't know what the future holds for me, but I know that it does hold for me in the sense of I'm going to help people now, help them reach their goals, and be there for people. Because I think, living with everything I've got, I think I want to help other people now, because there's going to be other people out there like me, and they need someone like me to say, you're going to be okay.
Well, Chris, we wish you all the best of luck with kind of whatever the future holds. I know there's also you do some kind of public speaking,
Yes,
you do some
public
kind of
speaking, yeah.
you do some mentoring as well. You do kind of master classes and all
Yeah.
that thing. We will include links to all of that in the
Yeah.
show notes. So if anybody wants to know any more about you and how they can kind of they can get support from you, that'll all be in the show notes. But Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really loved our chat today. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, James, for having me on. And just, please, if you ever wants to any help, just get in contact, because we need to make a change. We need to make a difference. And I think that's my job now. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Cheers.
Thank you, James.
I've been your host, James Whitelock, and I hope you can join me and more amazing guests next time. Marketing Rules podcast is a Thinking Circles production.